I am the new CEO of this company. If you do not like it, then leave this company immediately." Her cold voice, sharp as shards of glass, echoed against the heavy mahogany desk. The owner of that voice was my only sister. The CEO's chair was the one our father had devoted his life to protecting and where he had sat until the very end. She now sat there with an expression as if it had always been her rightful seat for decades, glaring down at me. In her slender but now infuriatingly powerful-looking hand, she held up a document inked in bold letters with the words "Renunciation of Inheritance," like the flag of a victorious nation. This was the CEO's office of the construction company that our father had built from nothing with his bare hands. On the walls hung proud photos of the buildings he had created, and on the shelves stood rows of architectural reference books. Just a few days ago, we had only finished our father's funeral, and yet I was not given even a moment to drown in grief. My name is Adele, and I'm 47 years old. For 25 years, I have worked as a site supervisor in this company, following only my father's large back, drenched in sweat and dust, living among the smells of concrete and steel beams. I firmly believe that the true value of construction lies not in the pages of MBA textbooks, but in the rough yet warm bonds of the workers on the site, and in the spirit that emerges from them, which was the very foundation of my father's management philosophy. Yet, my sister mocked those 25 years of mine as if they were worthless stones to be kicked aside on the roadside. A sister who knows nothing beyond the construction site could never manage a company, could she? Times have changed. Business today is not so sweet that instinct and guts alone can get you through. The golden badge of her MBA from business school, and her few years of experience working at a foreign firm in New York. That, it seemed, was the unshakable foundation of her confidence. Her smooth words declared that everything my father and I had valued was nothing but outdated junk. Behind her stood the executives who had crept toward her the moment our father fell ill, like hyenas who had spotted prey. All of them, who had once eaten from our father's hand, had chosen to repay his kindness with betrayal, becoming her accomplices. Their faces bore expressions of guilt mixed with the vile smile of men bowing to a new power. This was no petty quarrel between sisters. It was a cruel and ruthless coup, meticulously prepared over many years and launched by my own flesh and blood the moment she saw our father's death as the perfect opportunity. Was I to stand helplessly by as my father's fortress, built with his very life, and my own existence, were stolen away? Anger, despair, and the grief of betrayal churned deep in my gut. I bit down hard on my lips and glared at my sister. From here, the true battle to protect this company my father loved, and my own life, would begin. My sister had not always been so merciless. At least, the version of her that lives in the drawers of my memory was a timid girl 5 years younger, trailing uncertainly behind me with a nervous look on her face. The two of us, sisters, must have been treasures to our bold and larger-than-life father, precious beyond measure. Especially for me, who grew up surrounded by rugged men on construction sites, preferring to play until I was caked in mud. My sister, who liked delicate dresses trimmed with lace and quietly read books in the corner of her room, seemed fragile, someone I thought I had to protect. Our father loved us both equally, without distinction, though the way he expressed his affection was completely different. Adele, listen. A house is not built on blueprints alone. The feelings of people reside in every nail, in every wall. If you forget to respect the craftsmen who sweat and labor, all you end up with is a soulless box. Never, ever forget that. Those words have now become my very flesh and blood, the foundation of my management philosophy. Majoring in architecture at university and joining my father's company immediately after graduation was as natural to me as breathing. For 25 years, I have run forward with sincerity, guided only by his teaching as my compass. Meanwhile, my father showed my sister a completely different world. He allowed her to attend prestigious universities overseas and study the cutting edge of business, exactly as she desired. When she called internationally to announce she had obtained her MBA, my father narrowed his eyes with pride and said, "I see, that's wonderful. You are my proud daughter." Yet as he set down the receiver, I caught the fleeting trace of loneliness on his face. She will probably live in another world, beneath another sky, different from mine. My father murmured that while gazing out the window. It was an expression of both his joy for her success and his resignation that she would walk a path apart from him. After securing a job at a foreign consulting firm, my sister rarely returned home, only a few times a year, and when she did, she seemed to look down on our work as outdated. Are you still using such inefficient methods? Nowadays everything is managed by systems, and optimizing human resources is common sense. This is why old-fashioned family-run businesses always fail. I could not understand even half of the specialized terminologies she used, but I could clearly grasp that she was dismissing the hard-earned experience and intuition of my father and the craftsman as worthless relics. My father said nothing in reply, but I still vividly remember how his back, which had always seemed as massive as a mountain, looked smaller than ever at that moment. And then, the day of fate arrived. My father collapsed from overwork and illness. From that point on, my sister's actions were swift and precise, as if pre-programmed. She began visiting the company frequently, a place she had scarcely set foot in before, and started acting as though she were taking over leadership in place of our weakening father. One by one, she skillfully enticed the executives my father had trusted most, dangling promises of future positions and wielding polished words like bait. At that time, all I could do was pray for my father's recovery. Though I felt an unshakable unease about her behavior, I never imagined she was plotting to seize the company itself. At our father's funeral, while many mourners grieved his untimely death and wept, my sister never shed a single tear. Dressed in her black mourning attire, she looked like a flawlessly crafted doll, her dry eyes shining with a cold light far too detached for a place of sorrow. She never joined the circles of employees reminiscing about our father, but instead stared blankly at her smartphone screen, exchanging messages with someone over and over. That was not the face of a grieving sister, but the face of a ruthless strategist, hungrily seeking the next business opportunity. Looking back now, everything was part of her meticulous plan, prepared in anticipation of our father's death. While I drowned in grief, she remained calm, calculating her next move. Then came the day. Summoned to my father's office, I was handed a sheet of paper by my sister, and my voice erupted. A document of renunciation of inheritance? Who would ever approve such a thing? It was a cry so hoarse it hardly sounded like my own, yet it rose from the depths of my soul. The document thrust before me shimmered and warped like a lens distorting reality. The thick black ink was not merely a set of words. It was a declaration that the 25 years I had spent soaked in sweat and dust with my father, the nights of laughter and drinking with the craftsman, the passion I poured into every blueprint, all of it, was to be denied and erased by this single, flimsy sheet of paper. A boiling anger surged through me while an icy despair froze me at the same time. My voice rang hollowly through the CEO's office, silent as if to testify to my father's absence. Yet my sister did not so much as twitch an eyebrow. In her frozen eyes gleamed pity for her older sister and the absolute confidence of someone who wanted to say, "Everything is going exactly as planned." Do you still not understand? This is not a matter that can be solved with sentiment or nostalgia. This is business. Emotions are the greatest enemy of rational judgment. With those words, she pointed deliberately to a thick file spread across the desk. On the beautifully bound cover was printed in mechanical font, the title Management Improvement Plan. This company has lost many business opportunities because of its outdated family management. I will correct that. First, thorough cost cutting. Then, swiftly selling off any unprofitable divisions. Finally, securing large-scale funding from overseas investment funds. If I become CEO, I will make the stock price 5 times higher within 3 years. The vision of the future she described so smoothly was unbearably hollow, devoid of human blood. The livelihoods of the craftsmen whom my father had cherished like family, and the bonds with subcontractors built on trust over decades, were in her plan nothing more than sterile terms like cost or unprofitable divisions, destined to be mercilessly cut away. Father would never allow such a thing. What do you think of the craftsmen, our comrades? That father is no longer here. How long will you cling to the ghost of the dead? Her words pierced me again like a sharp knife. At that moment, one of the executives who had until then remained silent like a wallflower finally opened his mouth hesitantly. He was a man who had long served as my father's right hand and whom I had admired like an older brother. Executive Director Adele. We, the Board of Directors, have unanimously approved supporting your sister's management policy. For the future of the company, we too have made a painful decision. Unanimously. That single word struck my head like a hammer. A sensation overwhelmed me as though the floor beneath my feet was warping and twisting. Even this man, whom my father trusted most and who had been close to our family, had betrayed me. While watching my father's condition worsen, they had secretly conspired beneath the surface, preparing for this cruel coup with patient calculation. Everything had been a trap, set from the very beginning. This is the official minutes of the extraordinary board meeting held the other day. Another executive reverently offered a sheet of paper. I snatched it from his hand and glared at the rows of letters that leapt into my vision. There it was, a proposal to recommend my sister as the next CEO, signed and sealed by every attending director, inscribed as if to certify my defeat. The date was the day after my father's funeral. It was the very day I was drowning in grief. My vision turned red with rage, but I barely maintained my composure and struck at a fatal flaw. An extraordinary board meeting, you say? Don't make me laugh. This date. I was in the company all day. As executive director, I received no notice of convocation, and the meeting was held without my participation. Such a board meeting is legally invalid. You, and you. How could all of you, whom Dad trusted so deeply, take part in such a farce? At my piercing gaze, the executives I named cast down their eyes like guilty criminals. But my sister dismissed my legitimate protest with a scornful laugh. Don't be so emotional, Adele. This is why people say you are unfit for management. This was a formal procedure. The agenda this time was the appointment of the CEO, a matter concerning the very foundation of the company. You were one of the candidates, a direct stakeholder. Of course you could not be allowed to participate in the vote. That is basic compliance. As someone aspiring to be a manager, you should understand at least that much, shouldn't you? It was sophistry. Yet it was clear they had carefully prepared, found legal loopholes, and armed themselves with logic. My rightful argument was twisted effortlessly before the cold logic of business they had constructed. I was made to realize once again that this coup had not been planned overnight. Legally, it had already been thrust before me as an unassailable fact. Now, sign it. Wearing a triumphant smile that declared my resistance useless, my sister once again thrust forward the renunciation of inheritance document. At that moment, I mustered my last shred of hope and raised my voice. Wait. What about Aunt Mary? She was Dad's partner in founding this company, a co-founder. And the advisor who has served us for so many years. There is no way she would ever approve such tyranny. At my words, the executives wavered for a brief moment. But my sister only shrugged gracefully, as if even this had been within her expectations. Don't worry. Of course I tried many times to contact her. Unfortunately, she is on a long overseas trip right now, and I could not reach her at all. It is such a pity. But we cannot leave the company in a state of emergency forever, can we? When she returns, I intend to respectfully report to her this consensus of the board and gain her acceptance. It would be cruel to expect someone who has already stepped away from the front line of management to keep up with the speed of today's company, don't you think? Aunt Mary, on a trip overseas. I had not heard a single word of that. Deep down I knew it was all a lie. But surrounded by my sister and these executives, I had no way to pursue it. Even if I shouted that is a lie here, they would only pile on their prepared excuses. My words were powerless against the facts they had manufactured. It was a transparent falsehood, carefully arranged to isolate me completely and strip me of all power. As for the company's legal advisor, you need not worry about him either. I have already sent him a dismissal notice. From now on, everything will be entrusted to the law firm I contracted, one that is far stronger in handling global cases. Even my final line of defense had been targeted from the beginning of her plan. It was the same as declaring that I had no allies left anywhere. The light of hope went out with an audible snap. Now do you understand? You no longer have any chance of winning. She spoke coldly, then thrust the pen toward me once again. If you sign this, you can remain in the company in an honorary position, and a suitable retirement allowance will be prepared for you. It is my final kindness as a family. But if you refuse, I will call the security guards and have you thrown out of here as a trespasser. It was an unmistakable ultimatum. From this company that my father, myself, and so many comrades had built, I was about to be driven out like a criminal. Biting down hard on the inside of my lip, I tasted blood spreading slowly across my mouth. The word security guards shattered what little pride I still managed to cling to. I no longer even had the strength to resist. It was all over. Just as I was about to give in and reach out weakly for the pen, it happened. What in the world is this commotion? The heavy doors of the CEO's office flew open, and a sharp yet familiar voice filled the air with authority. Standing there was my aunt, my father's co-founder who had supported the company from nothing, and my own flesh and blood, and behind her stood the white-haired attorney who had served as our advisor since my father's time, arms folded with a stern expression. "Why are both of you here?" At the sudden, impossible appearance of the two who should not have been there, my sister and the executives turned pale. My sister's face went white as if she had seen a ghost. Their perfect plan did not take into account these two important figures. Aunt Mary cast a single glance at the strange atmosphere in the room, then strode across the floor with her heels striking sharply until she stood at my side, gripping my shoulder firmly. With eyes as cold as ice, she glared directly at my sister. "I never heard anything about you being the new CEO. You certainly have grown bold the moment your father passed away." Her words carried a frozen anger that did not sound like something directed at her own niece. My sister faltered for an instant, but quickly puffed herself up and snapped back sharply. "This was formally decided by the board of directors. Even if you call yourself a co-founder, you are supposed to have already stepped away from management. An outsider has no right to interfere. An outsider. Save that nonsense for when you are asleep." My aunt snorted and tilted her head mockingly. "Ever since the funeral, you and your circle have been suspicious. Some of the veteran employees from your father's time grew concerned and informed me. So together with the attorney, we did a little digging behind the scenes. And sure enough, we found you right in the middle of this ridiculous play." Her words revealed that this appearance was no coincidence. There were still allies of my father within the company who had quietly moved on my behalf. And how strange it is. I heard you told the board that I was on a long overseas trip and unreachable? Unfortunately for you, I have spent the past several weeks tending roses in my garden and have not set foot outside. Oh, and I do not recall seeing a single call or email from you. Tell me, exactly which corner of the world did you try to contact me in? At her biting sarcasm, my sister lost her words, and her face was drained of blood even further. The executives could not hide their agitation. Cornered, my sister turned her hostility toward the attorney, clinging to her last shred of bravado. And besides, this no longer concerns you. I already dismissed you as a company advisor. A man without authority has no right to remain here." Her hysterical cry was met with unflinching calm. The attorney did not move an eyebrow as he quietly spoke, his voice gentle yet forged of steel. "Ah, you mean this so-called dismissal notice, do you?" He pulled a sheet of paper from his attaché case. It was unmistakably the very dismissal notice my sister had boasted of sending. Casting his eyes over it briefly, he sighed as if he were looking at a child's scribble. "Unfortunately, you have no authority to dismiss me. An advisor is contracted by the company itself. And only the company's legitimate representative can exercise powers regarding that contract. The position you claim as new CEO is based, as I will point out, on a procedure with no legal validity whatsoever. Thus, any dismissal notice sent by a person without representative authority is meaningless under the law. Nothing more than a scrap of paper." With that, he tucked the scrap of paper back into his case and slowly stepped into the center of the room. Then he took up the extraordinary board meeting minutes my sister had brandished and furrowed his brow deeply. My, how efficient. It is almost like a textbook case of a hostile takeover. But there seems to be one crucial procedure missing, something not written in business textbooks. The formal will of the founder and majority shareholder, your father, has yet to be opened. Any board resolution that bypasses a shareholders' meeting and ignores the rights of the majority shareholder is legally meaningless. Surely, someone with an MBA such as yourself would know that much, would you not? His calm and logical words pierced the coup's most fundamental flaw like a scalpel. She had assumed our father would never leave behind a will unfavorable to her, and so willfully ignored the most vital procedure in her rush to fabricate a fait accompli. Yes, it was not over yet. I felt a single beam of light in the darkness. What my father had left me was not only this company. He had also left the strong bonds of trusted allies who would stand by me no matter what. I placed the pen I had nearly grasped back on the desk and met my sister's eyes directly. I will not let you have your way. This company is not a toy for your money-making schemes. My sister did not miss the fire of determination rekindled in my eyes. Her expression shifted from absolute confidence to panic, and finally to raw hatred toward me. The real battle was about to begin. The attorney, without raising his voice, drew from his heavy attaché case a single envelope sealed with great care. On it, in my father's slightly peculiar yet forceful handwriting, were the words "Last Will and Testament." Everyone present held their breath, as if they had forgotten even how to breathe, watching intently. I will now read aloud the official last will of the deceased CEO. The solemn voice of the attorney echoed through the room's silence like a stone dropped into still water. My sister's face turned pale, while the complicit executives shifted their eyes nervously, as if trying to deflect responsibility onto one another. All shares of this company that I hold, all assets, and all authority concerning management, I bequeath in their entirety to my eldest daughter, Adele, who for many years has stood at my side as my right hand on the worksite, and who understands more deeply than anyone else my philosophy of architecture and management. The words were clear and unmistakable. All authority was to be mine, and to my sister, not a single share was left. That cannot be. Dad would never leave such a will. It is a forgery. You and the attorney must have conspired to fabricate it. My sister shrieked hysterically, her voice piercing and shrill. But the attorney calmly continued. Of course, this will was created through proper procedure at the notary's office, and it is legally complete. And unfortunately, in the course of investigating this matter, other facts that cannot be overlooked came to light. At his signal, my aunt stepped forward and slammed several documents onto the desk. They were bank transaction records and printed logs of restored emails. While your father was suffering from illness, you helped yourself freely to the company's funds. Expensive overseas brand goods, lavish dinners night after night, extravagant bonuses for the executives you recruited to your side. The total amounts to hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is clear embezzlement. There is no way you can talk your way out of it. Her sharp accusation froze the faces of the executives. But the revelations did not stop there. Furthermore, you secretly contacted an external investment fund and made a deal. Once you became CEO, you planned to sell this company at an unfairly low price and receive an enormous success fee in return. Did you not? Confronted with decisive evidence, my sister could only tremble, her lips quivering, words failing her. The modern business theories she had worshipped were revealed as nothing more than convenient tools to satisfy her own limitless greed. Realizing the tables had turned completely and irreversibly, one of the executives suddenly switched sides and pointed at her with a desperate cry. We were deceived. She lured us by saying it was for the company's future. We are victims too. With that cowardly declaration, the others followed, each rushing to shift all blame onto my sister and scramble for self-preservation. Their disgraceful behavior was the very image of what my father despised most, people without conviction or pride, meeting a wretched end. I watched their farce quietly. Then I opened my mouth slowly. Silence. My voice was calmer than I expected, yet carried an undeniable authority that allowed no argument. At that single word, the vile bickering of the executives ceased instantly. As the CEO who now bore both my father's will and the future of this company, I would deliver their final judgment. All of you are dismissed, effective immediately. And you will be criminally prosecuted for embezzlement and aggravated breach of trust. Perhaps what you believed in was the title of MBA or the lure of easy money. But what I learned from my father, what I lived and experienced on site for 25 years, is this: honest work and the trust it creates are the strongest, most valuable power of all. Effort never betrays you. No one dared to object to my declaration. My sister collapsed to the floor, limp like a puppet with its strings cut. Her dazzling yet hollow ambition crumbled before the true value that my father had spent his life building. Months passed after that day. My sister and the executives who had sided with her were expelled from the company. As CEO, I could not overlook their acts of misusing company assets and attempting to sell the company itself. In consultation with my aunt and the attorney, I took a firm stance and filed criminal charges. It was my rightful duty to protect the company my father loved and the lives of its employees. As the investigation proceeded, details of my sister's personal misuse of company funds were revealed one after another. Her much-vaunted foreign connections vanished like scattered spiders the moment the scandal came to light. The MBA theories she had worshipped as her sole source of value ironically became the proof that without trust built by human hands, such theories are powerless. I formally succeeded my father and assumed the role of CEO. The first thing I did was to scrap all of the hasty restructuring plans my sister had been preparing. Then I visited each of the craftsmen who had supported the company alongside my father for so many years, as well as our business partners, and expressed my wish to continue walking together from here on. At first they were hesitant, but when they realized that I, more than anyone, understood the value of their work as someone from the field, they came to place even stronger trust in me than before. Managing a company is never easy. The challenges to be solved are countless. But I have 25 years of experience cultivated on the worksite and the management philosophy I inherited from my father, to believe in people. And above all, I have the best comrades who will sweat and labor by my side. The other day, while finishing leftover paperwork alone in the CEO's office, I found a faded photograph in a box of my father's belongings. In it, a young me wore a helmet too large for my head, while behind me my sister in a lace dress shyly clutched the hem of my clothes. That was the sister who always trailed after me. The fragile girl I thought I had to protect. When did she begin wearing such a cold mask? It was not only hatred but also a throbbing pain that tightened around my chest. As CEO, I still believe my decision was correct. Yet as her older sister, was that truly the only path? If only I had noticed her loneliness and impatience sooner, might something have changed? Unanswerable questions cross my mind every night. As if seeing through my inner conflict, my aunt came to the office recently and spoke with deep emotion. When I look at your back, sometimes I feel as if your father is still here. No. Perhaps you have already surpassed him. You are a fine leader. And as if sensing the hesitation in my eyes, she gently continued. As for that girl, it will take time. She must atone for her sins, but she does not have to stop being family. Face her when you are ready, in your own time. Those words became the greatest comfort for me. The grief of losing my father has not yet healed completely. And the scandal my sister caused left a deep wound in my heart. But I will face forward. Our efforts never betray us. With the words my father devoted his life to teaching me held close to my heart, I will make this company into one loved by all. And someday, when my sister faces her sins and completes her atonement, if she seeks help, then I will stand before her not as CEO, but simply as her sister. Somewhere in my heart, I believe the day when we can smile together again as sisters, just like in that faded photograph, will come.